What we're going to be working on today is what I meant to work on the other night, but I wasn't able to finish it because the distributor seal took me a little bit longer than expected. But I mentioned last time that I have these gauges that I put in the car. You got oil pressure is on the bottom down there, and it doesn't currently work. So I'd like to make it work today. That's the goal. In the process, I'm going to end up changing the oil filter. There is some sort of leak coming from the back of the engine, and it drips right on the exhaust, which is not too good. I was driving on the highway yesterday, about an hour drive there, hour drive back, and the whole way all I could smell was oil burning, so that wasn't too fun. So definitely got to fix that. We'll see what we got going on for leaks back there once I lay under there and get the oil filter off. But yeah, let's get under there. I am underneath the car at this point, and you can see here, it's kind of tough for me to hold the camera obviously, but you got the oil filter right there. You can see a drop there. You can see another drop underneath that little freeze plug right there. There's oil all over the bottom of this thing. So I'm going to try to get rid of some of these oil leaks. You got some coming from the drain plug, some from the oil pan. I also have a leak coming from the front cover. You may or may not be able to see the couple of drips right there. So all of that needs to go. I'm sick of this thing leaking oil. It's not too bad. I've only had to fill it once since the last oil change, probably 700 miles ago. I gave it like a half a quart since then. So it's really not too bad of a leak, but it does ruin the driveway and it does smell nasty. So we got to get rid of it. We're going to fix it. So I'm going to go ahead and put a pan under here, and then I'm going to unscrew the oil filter, and we're going to have some leak out, but we'll be ready. And after that, I'll show you guys where we're looking for the oil pressure switch that goes to the ECU, and we're going to have to unscrew that. And after that gets unscrewed, we're going to have to put an RT fitting and cross that bridge when we get there. So, yep, I'm going to go ahead and take off that oil filter right now. So right here, I'm going to try to take off this oil filter right here. It's going to start to drip on us. Here we go. Just got to make sure I'm catching it in our pan here. I'll tell you, these oil filters on Hondas are pretty easy to get. I've had some people come over and do oil changes, and I've had a pretty difficult time with it, just because the locations are so bad. I'll make sure it's still dripping in the right place here. Almost there. That's it right there. Alright, I'm just going to let that drain a little bit, and we can get up in there and take a look at that sensor. Looking up here, you can see, I'll try to point to it, this guy right here. That is the oil pressure sender for the ECU. So it'll be hard for me to get a shot, but I'll do my best. I'm going to try to take off this sensor right here, and once we get that off, we can screw an RT fitting. So I'm going to get to doing that, and I'll check back with you guys. This is pretty much the best shot that I can give you guys of the oil pressure switch, but I'm going to try to reach up and unplug the thing. The rubber on here seems a bit stiff. Let's see if I can get it. There we go. Alright, it seemed to come off. So now we're just going to remove that residual rubber from there. and we should be able to use a socket to get this off. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then be able to move on to the next step. I was able to remove that rubber stuff off of there. See if I can show you. The camera's not going to focus, but this rubber guy right here is like cemented on there, so that came off. Now I should just be able to get a 24mm socket on here. Gonna do my best here. It's pretty high up in there. See if I can get the socket on there. Might need an extension of some sort. I need to come back with it. Let's see. Oh, it looks like we got it started. Spinning the socket, so I should be able to get it by hand now. There we go. That's that. Here's the switch that I pulled out. So this is our oil pressure sender. You can see right there where it meets the block, there's all kinds of oil on it. So I actually think that this is our oil leak culprit on the back of the block. I think that the oil is leaking out of this switch, and with the oil leaking out of the switch, it falls down right on the oil filter, and then it proceeds to leak right on my exhaust, which I think is giving me that nice burning oil smell while I drive around. So I'm gonna go to the parts store and pick up a new sensor for me to use with my new sender for my gauge. So we'll kill two birds with one stone. We'll install the gauge, and hopefully we'll fix another oil leak on this car, because it leaks from about everywhere imaginable. So little by little we'll get all the oil leaks cleaned up. While I was at the auto parts store, decided to get a new air filter for my girlfriend's car. Hers was pretty dirty, and she's also got a collection of nuts in her intake box. So we're gonna vacuum those out, and we're gonna replace this guy right here. You can tell the filter's messed up. You can see light through it. See, you can't really see much light through that. If I compare it to the new filter, you can see a great deal more light through that one right there. So you know that that one, obviously you know it's a new filter just based on the color, but that's how you know if you got to change your filter. Plus you can see there's all kinds of leaves and contaminants in here. So I'm going to change that out really quick. That's a really quick swap. Should give her a little bit more fuel mileage hopefully, and throttle response. You know, she's not really looking for performance or anything, but air filter is a good thing to be changed. You can see right here it was changed by Midas maybe in 2012, so it's a long time ago. So it was due. So we'll get that all changed out, and then I'll get back to work on the Honda. So how do you feel after having your air filter changed in your car?
Very confident with my throttle now.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. The throttle response is gonna be like
Way better.
like great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
So
for changing it.
of course. So yeah. So what we got here is our new oil pressure sensor. So looks all shiny and clean. It's brand new. And what I have next to it here is some Teflon tape. So when I screw this new sensor in, I want to make sure that it does not leak. So I'm going to wrap some Teflon tape around it, and I'll show you guys the process of doing that, so that we make sure that this does not leak. But I'm going to go grab my 1/8 inch T fitting so that we can plug this into it, and then plug the oil pressure sender for my gauge into the T as well, and then we'll screw it into the block. So that's what's next. Now that I got my 1/8 inch fitting here, I've decided that it would probably be for the best if I put this into the block first, into the engine block, and then I could screw these two sensors in there. This is the one for the gauge right here, so I'll probably end up putting this one like this, but if I put this one in like this, and I go to spin this in the block, I'm probably going to hit things in there because it's pretty tight. So I'll put this on afterwards. So right now I'm going to put some Teflon tape on this. So you just get your Teflon. I'm going to get a good amount. I want it to be nice and tight. Sometimes it'll get messed up on you, but it's not a big deal. Important thing about Teflon tape is you want to remember to wrap in the direction of the threads, right? So you want to start like this and wrap righty-tighty around whatever you're wrapping. That way, when you go to tighten it, it'll actually tighten with the Teflon tape on it. And this might be too much. We'll find out when I get under there, but I'm overdoing it a little bit. It's okay. So, now that we're all full of Teflon tape here, I'm going to go try to screw this into the block. Not much sense in taking you guys with me, but I'll show it to you after it's all done. And yeah, we'll go from there. We'll probably have to Teflon this guy as well. And this one I'm not going to Teflon because it looks like it's already got some sort of Loctite on it. This is the one that came with the gauge, like I said, so it looks good to me. So we'll probably just leave this one. I'm going to Teflon this one for sure, though, and this one's going to go straight into the end like this. And then this guy will go up in here, and then we can have both the oil pressure for the ECU and for my gauge. So that's how that's going to work. So I've got my fitting on. He's all sitting pretty up there, all tightened down. And I left the one elbow facing where there should be enough room for me to throw my gauge sensor. And then straight off of it should be my regular fuel pressure. Oil pressure switch. And yeah, we should be all set. I had a little bit of a tough time, or a bit of a tough time threading it in. I took it out at one point and I put the original oil pressure sender back in to see how that threaded in, and that was really easy. So this, the threads on there hopefully aren't messed up, hopefully aren't cross-threaded. I guess we'll see if it leaks when we fire it up, then we'll know. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and screw in those other two sensors, plug in the factory sensor, and then we'll get to running the wire. And after we run the wire, I can go ahead and screw our oil filter back in, and then we'll be all set, ready to fire it up and see if the gauge works, see if we have any leaks too. So you can see right up in there, I got that brass fitting tightened down nice and tight. I went a little bit more and I actually spun it one more turn when I was putting on the sensor for the ECU, just because I was able to get a socket on it and get it even tighter. And I've got my sender for my gauge on there as well. So we should be all ready now. All I have to do is run the wire and plug it in. And then after that we should be getting an input. And now it's all set to put it back together and check for leaks. So I'm going to go ahead and start running that wire through, and I'll show you guys the process of that. When I was putting the gauges in, I decided that this gauge pillar, it has screws here and at the bottom, and the more time you take out those screws and put them back in, the weaker they're going to be. So I decided that it would be best for me to just do it all in one shot. So I wired the oil pressure gauge, which is this guy down here. I wired him in, ran the wires down underneath the dash, and then I forgot that I have this connector right here. So this connector right here is not going to fit through the firewall through the hole that I made. So I'm going to cut this wire, run it through the firewall, and then resolder these 3 wires back together after I get it through the firewall. It is what it is. I wish I didn't have to do that, but I kind of messed up. And yeah, I could take the whole gauge back apart and run the smaller piece through the firewall, but not feeling it, so I'm just going to cut this. What I have here is a grommet, and this is to go in the firewall, because you have to drill a hole in the firewall with a drill bit, and you don't want it to leak water, and mainly you don't want the wires to rub through, because if the wires are just placed on the sharp edges of the firewall steel, then the wires can rub through and then you can have a short, and you don't want a short. So these Firewall Grommets, I got this kit for probably $7 or something on eBay. It might have been like $12 or something like that, but it's really worth it. You get a lot of different sizes. So what I'm going to do is I already made sure that my wire would fit on the inside of this. So I'm just going to take my micrometer here, find that diameter there, and then that's how I'm going to know what drill bit I'm going to need. So I'm going to go find a drill bit this size, probably a step drill bit. I have one in here. So got to find which size it is. So I think it might be this one right here is probably going to be the best size. So I'll put a little piece of tape on there so that I know how deep to drill. So it looks like it's going to be 3 steps, and then this guy should fit in nice and easy, and then we'll go from there and run our wire. So up in there, if you follow this wire all the way up, you can see where I've placed the grommet. I have my other 2 wires here. One's for the air fuel gauge to go to the wideband, and the other one is this vacuum line that I still have to zip tie out of the way. But that's the new hole right there, my grommet installed. I'll show you guys from the other side, but now I just got to pull through enough slack and solder that connector on there and plug it in and route the wires inside, and then we're all set. Sounds easier said than done though. When I do repairs like this, when it comes to wiring, I prefer to solder. Some people do butt connectors and that'll work, but corrosion can make that fail with time. I mean, and some people just twist wires together, and that's not going to fly. So I like to solder. I think it's the most permanent method, and I like to use shrink wrap as well. It just has the most professional look to it. Soldering irons aren't too much money. This is a propane, or a butane rather, butane soldering iron. So this is nice and portable. But just gonna put a little bit of solder on there, just enough to fuse the 2 wires together, and that's about it. And then I'm gonna wait for this to cool down a little bit, and I'm gonna try to put this shrink wrap over it that I have here. Looks like it got a little bit shrunk on me already, but we'll see. If I can't get it, I'll just tape it. I have another piece of shrink wrap here that I'll slide over all of them. Looks like this one will go, but we'll see. I'm going to do that right now, and then we'll go from there. I ended up shrink wrapping it and taping it just because I wasn't 100% satisfied with the way that it looked. So hopefully it won't get wet, and hopefully it won't corrode. And if it does, I guess I'll fix it when I need to. But for right now, I'm going to route this guy down, plug it in. Not much to see there. I'm just going to try to find a good routing area along the firewall, run it with some other wires, zip tie it in, make sure it's nice and tucked away, not going to get hot on anything. And then I'll plug it in, and I'm ready to screw the oil filter on. And once I do that, I'll fire it up. I'll see if I have any leaks. Really hoping for no leaks. Something that you always want to make sure you do when you're putting on a new oil filter is to just take a dab of some of the old oil and put it on your finger with gloves and just run it around the seal like this. And that'll make sure that your seal does not tear when you're screwing it in. And it'll make it much easier to get the filter off when you go to change your filter the next time. If you don't do that, you could run into problems trying to get the filter off. But that makes sure that it seals really good. So that's one tip. I'm going to go ahead and screw this oil filter on, and we should be ready to fire it up. I'm about to start the car now, and we're going to see if the oil pressure gauge reads, and we're also going to see if I have any leaks. So you guys will be able to watch the gauge there, so we'll see. So far so good. I don't see any leaks. The gauge looks to be holding a good amount of pressure. I'm going to lay under the car right now and just make sure there's no leaks. I'm not seeing any leaks under the car at all. We're looking really good. So let's see what the oil pressure does when we give it a little rev. And it seems to go up. It looks like we have very high oil pressure. This is still a bit of a high idle because the car is warming up, but I expect it to go down a little bit, but around 80 psi of oil pressure on a cold start is pretty good. That's pretty good pressure, so I'm very happy with that. When we turbo it, we should have adequate oil pressure without even having to shim the oil pump. So that's really exciting. I'm really happy about that. So yeah, it looks like the job's complete. I just have to tidy up some wires underneath the dash, and then we should be all set. I'm pumped. And now that the car is pretty much warmed up, let me check. Yeah, we're almost warmed up. We're chilling right around 40 psi, which is what you'd expect. We'll probably drop down to 30 once we fully warm up. So at idle, it's going to read around 30. And if I can hold this steady, hopefully you can see it jump. I'm not sure if I shook too much, we'll see. But yeah, I'm very happy. I'm excited. Can't wait to drive it now, not smell oil burning, because I really think that fixed our problem.